Why are Rybovich and Viking yachts so different? One started over a century ago in an immigrant's repair shed. The other was built by two New Jersey brothers who originally sold steel. Here's something boaters rarely know. One of these family yards was sold and resold so many times the family literally lost the right to use their own name. Yet the other has stayed in the same lineage for 60+ years and now dominates the industry. Today, we're breaking down exactly why. The story begins with a young Slovak carpenter who stepped off a boat at Ellis Island and somehow ended up shaping American sport fishing forever. John Pop Rybovich emigrated from what's now Slovakia in 1902 and settled along Lake Worth in southern Florida about a decade later. By 1919, he'd hung out his shingle as a boat builder, fixing skiffs for commercial fishermen and occasionally, yes, really, helping the local rum runners during Prohibition. Pop had 3 sons, Johnny, Tommy, and Emil. All 3 got drafted or volunteered for World War II. When they came home, they didn't go back to fixing other people's vessels. They invented a whole new kind of boat. What launched in the late 1940s was the first custom sport fisherman of its kind, hull number 1 of a yard that would eventually turn out 75 hand-built masterpieces over the next 2.5 decades. The family name would echo through fishing history forever. But that fairy tale beginning is only half the story, and the other half starts 1,000 miles north in New Jersey. Now jump ahead about 45 years and shift the scene 1,000 miles up the East Coast. In April of 1964, 2 brothers named Bill and Bob Healy bought a struggling little wooden boat shop in New Gretna, New Jersey called Peterson Viking. They were the sons of a structural steel man, and Bill had cut his teeth in his dad's steel yard before pivoting into real estate with his brother. The Healys had already acquired the adjacent Bass River Marina, so when the neighboring boat shop went belly up, they grabbed it almost by accident. They renamed the outfit Viking Yachts and got to work. Bill ran production. He literally walked the factory floor every day, shaking hands with carpenters and electricians on his way out the door each evening. Bob handled the legal and financial side. They started by turning out wooden 37-foot sport fishermen, just like the previous owners had. That work ethic has now spanned 3 generations of Healys, and the family is still running the business as we speak. Here's the kicker. The Florida outfit had a decades-long head start on the Jersey brothers. And yet today, the New Jersey company dwarfs the Palm Beach shop by orders of magnitude in size, output, and revenue. How did that happen? The answer is buried in 2 completely different philosophies about what a fishing boat even is in the first place. Yet these 2 outfits didn't just build different boats, they thought about boats in completely different ways from day one. Down in Palm Beach, Pop's 3 sons saw themselves as artists. Each hull was a one-off, hand-shaped for a specific owner, with that owner's quirks baked into the design. The yard was famous for ridiculous attention to detail. Book-matched teak grain, painstakingly faired hulls, finishes that wouldn't look out of place on a Steinway piano. From their first custom sport fisher launched in the late 1940s, the philosophy was simple. Build one perfect boat, then build the next one a little better. Up in Jersey, the Healys took the opposite approach. They wanted serious fishing yachts that working professionals could actually afford without taking a second mortgage on their souls. Bill ran production like a steel mill foreman, walking the floor every day. Pat Healy, Bill's son and the current CEO, freely admits the brothers studied Hatteras and Bertram boats at every show, taking notes, swiping good ideas and putting their own Jersey spin on the results. Pat actually said in a published interview that the competition would kick our ass everywhere else outside the Northeast in the early days. That's a direct quote from him, not me being mean. Yet the Florida shop's biggest legacy isn't the boats themselves, it's the inventions they gave the entire industry. Here's where the bigger story gets really interesting. The Palm Beach yard wasn't just hand-building beautiful boats, They were inventing huge chunks of modern sport fishing equipment along the way. The fighting chair, which is now standard on virtually every offshore boat in the world, was reportedly developed at the yard back in 1933, mostly the work of John Jr., the founder's eldest son. Think about that. The most iconic piece of fishing gear in the entire sport came out of a small immigrant family's repair shed. During the Great Depression, the yard also introduced the broken shear line as a design element on a 1952 build called Miss Chevy IV. That distinctive curved transition you now see on dozens of high-end sport fishermen. Most production builders eventually copied it. The same hull got the first aluminum tuna tower, and it pioneered the transom door for landing big game right at the cockpit. 3 industry-shaping innovations on one boat, all in 1952. Their clientele was wild too. Ernest Hemingway brought his Pilar in for sport fishing modifications back in 1934. That boat now sits in the Hemingway Museum in Cuba. Hull number 2, named Clary Joe, was reportedly owned by Tony Accardo. Yes, that Tony Accardo, Al Capone's legendary Chicago enforcer. These were not boats for the timid. The Jersey side, meanwhile, has built a different kind of innovation track record. Less about single landmark inventions, more about relentless engineering at scale. They pioneered the modern resin-infused composite sportfish hull at production volumes. Their proprietary Viper independent rudder system, developed for tournament fishing, lets the bigger convertibles back down on a billfish, spin on axis, and dance around like vessels 2/3 their size. The bigger flagship hulls combine Baltec coring with hybrid aramid and e-glass lamination. Aerospace-grade construction packed into a fish-killing machine. Different style of innovation entirely. Yet none of those firsts would matter without the construction divide that separates these two builders at their core. Here's where the two outfits truly split. In the early 1970s, the Healy brothers made a bet that would define the entire future of their company. They saw fiberglass coming, really coming, and they jumped in with both feet. The first fiberglass Viking, a 33-foot convertible, splashed in 1971. A year later came the now legendary Viking 40 convertible, which sold roughly 400 units over the following decade. That was production boat building history. The Jersey shop figured out tooling, molds, lamination schedules, and assembly lines while half the industry was still arguing about whether plastic could ever match wood. Down in Florida, the founder's family doubled down on the opposite philosophy. They stayed loyal to wood, specifically cold-molded construction. That's where thin layers of mahogany get laminated diagonally over a temporary jig with epoxy. Done right, cold molding produces a hull that's lighter, stiffer, and arguably more beautiful than fiberglass. Done at scale, though, it's economic suicide. A cold-molded 50-footer can take 18 months to 2 years to construct. A comparably sized Viking rolls off the production line in a fraction of that time. There's a real engineering debate buried here. Devotees of the cold-molded method swear their hulls ride softer because wood absorbs vibration in a way fiberglass simply doesn't. Owners of the New Jersey product fire back that resin-infused composite hulls are stronger, lighter, more consistent, and don't rot if you forget to dry them out one season. Both sides have a point. Viking's modern fiberglass uses high-grade Baltec coring, hybrid aramid, and e-glass lamination, and serious carbon fiber reinforcement on the bigger models. This isn't your dad's gel coat from decades back. But here's the controversial bit that doesn't get discussed enough. The wooden boats from the Palm Beach yard absolutely hold their value. A well-kept hull from the 1960s can still fetch serious money today, and people will hunt them down. Try telling that to a depreciation-conscious accountant. They'd lose their mind. And once you see what these two builders are actually charging customers, the gulf between them gets even wider. Let's talk about what's currently on offer, because the lineups tell you everything. Viking's current fleet runs from the 38 billfish all the way up to the new 90 convertible, with the 44, 46, 50, 54, 58, 64, 68, 74, and 82 in between. The previous flagship, the 92 convertible, was a 93-foot, 205,000-pound, 6-stateroom monster that could cruise at 31 knots and hit nearly 37 knots flat out, with the optional twin MTU diesels making around 2,635 horsepower each. 21 of those hulls were delivered before the new 90 took over to meet stricter emissions rules. That's the kind of production scale we're talking about. Now, here's where this video gets personal for the outboard crowd. In 2019, the Jersey shop launched Valhalla Boatworks, their center console division, and it's basically Viking DNA in a smaller, lighter, outboard-powered package. The current lineup spans 7 models from the V28 Bay all the way up to the V55, plus the new sport yacht variants. All of them use Michael Peters Yacht Design's patented twin-stepped ventilated tunnel hull, which sounds like marketing word salad but actually works. It cuts drag, increases lift, and makes these boats genuinely fast. You can spec them with Mercury or Yamaha outboards in twin, triple, quad, or even quint configurations on the bigger hulls. A V37 with triple Yamaha, XTO 425s or triple Mercury. Verado 400 is the kind of rig that ruins your weekends in the best possible way. The Valhalla center console line has reportedly delivered around 250 boats since launch, expanding what was a purebred Sportfish builder into the outboard segment in a serious way. And here's an underrated detail. The Mullica River facility, where these are built, used to be the old Ocean Yachts plant. The Healy family bought it, retooled it, and turned it into the Valhalla production home, keeping the main new Gretna lines free for the bigger convertibles. But the boutique competition down in Florida operates in a completely different universe, and the contrast will surprise you. Meanwhile, the original Florida builder's modern operation, Michael Rybovich and Sons, started by the founder's grandson, plays a different game entirely. The current shop builds a handful of large custom sport fishermen up to 80+ feet. Their first hull under the revived family name was a 64-foot pod drive walkaround called Lizzie B. They don't really do center consoles, they don't do outboards, and they certainly don't do production runs of 400 boats over a decade. What they do is build the kind of one-off masterpiece that has people on the dock walking over with their drinks just to stare. The price tags reflect that. A new Valhalla V37 will run you well into the 6- or 7-figure range loaded up, not pocket change, but accessible to a successful business owner. A new custom build from the Palm Beach shop sits squarely in multi-million-dollar territory, with 18 to 24-month builds and an actual waiting list. The two outfits are not even shopping the same buyer. What's interesting is that despite the wild size difference, both builders are obsessed with the same thing: boats that can win tournaments. The Healy family fields its own demo program crewed by employees fishing the white marlin and billfish circuits as a rolling research and development lab. The Florida shop's custom rigs show up on those same tournament docks, owned by serious anglers who want a piece of history under their feet. The trophies don't care who built the boat. The bragging rights, however, very much do. The other interesting wrinkle is the design pedigree. The Florida grandson's son, Dusty, became the first family member to earn a formal naval architecture degree. He graduated from the Webb Institute of Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering. That's a school people in the industry actually respect. So the next generation of cold-molded custom hulls won't be built purely on intuition anymore. There's serious engineering muscle behind them now. But the real shocker is what these two builders look like financially, and the gap is wider than you'd expect. Now this is where the two stories really diverge, and it's almost comical. In a typical recent fiscal year, the New Jersey builder reportedly delivered around 79 new yachts, with their facility capable of cranking out roughly 100 per year across multiple production lines. Over the company's lifetime, they've built more than 5,500 boats. The factory itself sprawls across roughly 880,000 square feet of buildings on 55 acres along the Bass River. At peak employment, before the luxury tax crisis of the early 1990s, they had around 1,500 boat builders on the payroll. Compare that to the Florida shop's career-long output. Roughly 75 hulls were launched by the three original brothers between the late 1940s and the early 1970s. 75 hulls in 25 years. The current revived shop, run by the founder's grandson and his sons, produces maybe 1 or 2 new builds at any given time. We are not in the same financial ballpark. We're not even playing the same sport. Then there's the empire question. The Jersey outfit isn't just building boats anymore. They own Atlantic Marine Electronics, Palm Beach Towers, and Valhalla Boatworks, plus a service center in Riviera Beach. About 90% of every Viking yacht is reportedly built in-house. Wiring, tower aluminum, electronics. That kind of vertical integration is almost unheard of in modern manufacturing of any kind. The Florida operations integration is different. Call it horizontal nostalgia. Design, engineering, and carpentry all happen under one roof, but at a pace that allows for those famously book-matched teak veneers. Quality over quantity, taken to a philosophical extreme. Here's the controversial part. Some old-timers in the industry argue that the assembly line approach has hollowed out craftsmanship across the entire sportfish world. Others point out that without scale, sportfishing yachts would be limited to billionaires, and the sport itself would have died decades ago. Both groups have a fair point. Without the production model, your buddy with the dental practice doesn't get to own a real offshore fishing yacht. But the family stories behind these two empires are even more dramatic. Wait until you hear what happened next. The Palm Beach Yard has had more ownership changes than a free agent NFL quarterback. The founder's 3 sons ran the place beautifully until tragedy struck. Tommy, the lead designer and soul of the operation, died of cancer in 1972 at age 52. Their father, Pop, had passed just 2 years earlier. Johnny and Emil tried to keep things going, but the work ethic Tommy set was impossible to maintain. By 1975, the original family business was sold to a businessman named Bob Fisher. That sale started a domino chain that lasted decades. The yard changed hands multiple times. Wayne Huizenga Jr., son of the blockbuster video founder, bought the historic Flagler Drive property in 2004 and turned it into a world-class super yacht service marina, rather than a builder of new boats. That marina was sold again in 2021 to Safe Harbor Marinas. The legendary Florida property, in other words, is now a mega yacht repair facility, not a sportfish builder. The New Jersey story, in stark contrast, is almost boringly stable. Bill and Bob founded the place. Bill's son Patrick took over as CEO. Pat's 3 kids, Sean, Justin, and Caitlin, now hold sales and marketing roles. Bob Healy Sr. passed away in 2021 at 92. Bill passed in the summer of last year at age 97. Same family, same factory, 3 generations deep. And there's one more wrinkle to this rivalry that almost nobody talks about, and it nearly killed the entire industry. However, in the early 1990s, the federal government slapped a 10% luxury tax on new yachts. The result was immediate and brutal. The Jersey factory was forced to slash its workforce from 1,500 down to fewer than 80 employees almost overnight. Hundreds of marine companies across the country closed for good. Bob Healy Sr. organized busloads of laid-off boat builders to march on Capitol Hill, and the tax was repealed in 1993. Without that fight, the entire American sportfish industry might have folded, and the Florida custom shop would have suffered too. So, in a strange way, the Jersey brothers' political battle saved everyone. Today, the two builders coexist in completely different universes. The New Jersey operation dominates global production. They're now arguably the largest privately owned sport fishing yacht builder in the world. Larger Vikings keep pushing past 90 feet, with construction techniques borrowing from aerospace. Meanwhile, the Florida boutique remains a custom shop, building the kind of legacy boats that get passed down between generations. But here's the truly weird part, and the one thing both builders would never publicly admit to each other. Jokes aside, here's the unspoken reality. Both of these builders need each other. The custom Palm Beach yard provides the romance and the history that makes the entire sport fishing world feel meaningful. Without that fabled heritage, there's no aspirational dream for the buyer of a production fiberglass battle wagon. And without the production builder up in Jersey, the sport itself would have shrunk into an even tinier niche of the ultra-wealthy. The custom yard sells the dream. The production yard delivers it at scale. What's actually happening is two completely valid answers to the same question. How do you build a great sport fishing boat? One says, by hand, slowly, with reverence. The other says, in a factory, efficiently, with relentless improvement. Both work. Both produce world-class boats. Both should keep doing exactly what they're doing. If this rundown gave you a new angle on these two builders, you'll want to see how a totally different shop tackled the same problem. The boat building world has more weird rivalries than most people realize, and once you start digging, you'll never look at a Sportfish convertible the same way. Catch you on the next one.